Prologue. Bobby Reyes was living his dream, if his dreams were being drunk in some bar. But right now, he was in the desert, lost. Just beyond the shadows, he sees what he thinks is a coyote slowly advancing toward him. He can see its eyes glowing as it stares at him. Then he hears his name carried on the wings. Bobby Reyes. Suddenly, his name is booming as he shook awake. Bobby, wake up! You're drunk, boy! Go home! He is in the bar, and had nodded off. He wasn't sleeping that easy as of late. What? Are you dreaming about that girl you saw again? McGill, the barman. No, not her. A coyote, I think. And I didn't make her up. It happened. Sure. It happens to all of us out here in the desert. Now go home, and don't drive. You won't make it. McGill was serious. Best not to piss off the only bar that lets you slide on the tab. Bobby spent 10 minutes in the parking lot, calling to see if anyone could pick him up. No chance. He decided to risk the 20-minute drive back to his trailer. He almost made it. Bobby was driving against the slow desert nightfall. He really should have replaced that fuse for the headlights. There are no streetlights at night for desert town outskirt roads. His trailer was almost in sight when a shadow entered the road in front of his truck. He was just drunk enough to react before thinking and swerved. His truck slid to a stop, stuck in a gully. Damn it! It'll take another truck to pull me out tomorrow, he thought, cursing himself. I should have just hit that coyote with my truck, he thought, then wondered if his dream was more like a vision come true. No, I'm just drunk. He started his walk to the trailer. Midway, he could sense he was being watched, stalked. Bobby knew not to run, but to take the offensive. He started making loud, yipping noises while he drew out his bowie knife, of which he was proficient. He heard it growl, then come charging at him. A sleek, furred beast leapt at him. Bobby thrust the blade deep into its midsection while being knocked backwards. He raised the knife, ready to strike again, when he realized the blade had snapped off. The last thing that Bobby would see as he was savagely ripped apart is a large, gaping mouth with enormous canine fangs. The benefit of having worked in numerous cities is you have a fair supply of friendly couches to crash on when you travel. I go where the stories take me, and this was close enough to call on an old friend who owed me. My favorite Fed, Bernie Jenks. Things ended badly for me last time, and Bernie was powerless to prevent my banishment from Sin City. But he was there. He knew what we stopped, and what I did was justified. It was enough to guilt him into a stopover and some money to fund this jaunt to a nearby town in the high desert. They call Pahrump the bump over the hump, and I was on my way to visit one of the two things it's most famous for. Sadly, that's not the brothels. There's a late-night radio host there who's made a better career out of covering the unusual than I have. He has a home, a show, and a very big following. I tune in as often as I can, and we have a deal.
From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever the case is, wherever you are in the world, this is Midnight in the Desert. I'm Art Bell. Welcome to the program. This program is free.
He gives me the inside scoop on the strange things that his callers tell him, and I give him whatever I find out as an exclusive. The usual problem is, many times, the things I tell him, even he doesn't believe. But this time, the story happened in his own backyard. So I'm off to meet Art Bell, as he tells me of a possible killing by the Chupacabra. Giving up playtime with his daughter, Bell took me into his home to talk privately about the details. A deputy found the body after a day, making a welfare check when Bobby was a no-show at his diner job. A fan in the coroner's office said his throat was torn out and the body was half-eaten. The sheriff called in animal control to assist in the investigation. And this is where it gets weird. Art said in his classic spooky tones, an official story is that he passed out drunk and was savaged by either feral dogs or coyotes, but the guy in animal control, another fan, had a very different take. The fan told Art there were signs Reyes fought back with a broken knife and the blade was not found. Only one set of tracks, and they match a large wolf. We don't have wolves in Nevada, and coyotes are solitary hunters. The large bite marks had fangs unlike a wolf. Lastly, there were a couple of sightings of a strange, dog-like animal seen in the area. Post. Bell said someone thinks it could be the Chupacabra wandering north. A cryptozoologist on a show tonight will talk with us. I told Art I'll look into it, but I can't be known or have any contact with officials. One background check, and this state is ready to level murder charges on me from years ago. That'll never go away. That night, I sat in with Art for a show. His expert wasn't too much help, and open lines brought responses like, "The Mothman stole my catalytic converter." The next day, I tried to learn more about the victim from people he knew. He had no family living here or close neighbors. Was there a reason for what happened, or was it just random? Something that'll give me an idea of what I'm up against, where to look. It's a big desert, and the sheriff is already hunting at the crime scene. I spoke with the diner, and they said he worked part-time, only enough to cover the bills. Bobby was a treasure hunter. He spent his time rooting through the hills and old mines, looking for fortune. He hoped to find some of Ted Benion's buried silver, rumored to have been hidden by the dead casino mogul somewhere in the Pahrump outskirts. My next stop would be the bar, the last place Bobby was before he died. Post. The only good bar in town, obviously, would have to be at a brothel, and Bobby's choice was Sherry's Ranch. The ladies spend time in the bar courting customers for drinks and entertainment. They mostly told me that Reyes was a dreamer with no money, so they didn't waste time on him. Much the same vibe they picked up from me. The bartender, named Snake, knew Bobby, and I caught him before he rode off on his hog. He told me, "Bobby was a drunk as usual that night. He had a dream about a coyote while at the bar, so I told him to leave. Bobby was always talking big with no results in his life. He washed out of the military, he couldn't hold a job, and he couldn't get a girl. He even made up a story about finding a beautiful naked woman in a cave. Said he was exploring an old mine from the copper days. 100 feet in, he sees a woman lying naked on the floor. He thought she was dead and was startled when she got up. He was scared. She was just staring at him until she walked over and started making out with him. Said she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She undressed and went down on him, and it was amazing. Afterwards, Bobby said she held him down and said to never tell anyone about her or what they did. Well, nobody ever admitted to it. Nobody believed it. It was sad what happened to Bobby, but he really didn't have a life to lose. I went back into the air-conditioned bar to ask myself, what's next? When some young Native American just blurted out to me, I think it was dogs. I looked at him and asked why, and he said, because the people in Vegas, they love to have pit bulls until they're too much trouble. So they drive them out into the desert and leave them. They always show up here all the time. Is that so? Yeah. Although my grandpa, he would say it was one of those evil spirits that got him. Prologue. Nye County Sheriff Roy Thompson was doing all he could to play down the gruesome death of Reyes to elude fear. Turns out, another corpse was discovered, and he kept it silent. The body had been in the desert for weeks and had no ID. Certain that some rogue wolf was in the area, he quietly hired an expert marksman hunter from the nearby High Point Arms training resort, a group of local gun nuts. Better to send out one than to get a posse shooting up the whole area. Reese Vitale was a good tracker and had found an area the beast frequents. He set up a perch on higher ground earlier in the day to take out a wolf. But the high ground wasn't empty or safe. Menhu Jock Blue Sky, a native Paiute, was a young, friendly guy, curious of a strange-dressed man asking questions in a bar that had nothing to do with sports, the heat, or the ladies. I was currently at my wit's end and could use some insight. He was also here that night and said Bobby's dream might have been a desert spirit, either warning him or telling him of his doom. When I asked him more, he said I should really talk with his gramps, Chief Blue Sky. He knew all the native legends and could help me with it. But the but was he normally doesn't talk to non-natives of such things, so I'd have to bring him a peace offering to earn his trust. So $40 and 24 wings with sides later, we rode out to Chief's, a collection of trailers and shacks, and little else. Post. It turned out that Chief was a nickname everyone called him because he was old and doesn't look like an Ed. While Jock, Chief, and I sat down to eat, he briefly called in what was a truly beautiful young woman to share in the meal. She had eyes that could stop a man's heart, and she was using them on me. Chief said, "This is my niece, Trudy, from Phoenix. She's come to stay with us because she was getting into too much trouble there. My sister thought the desert would keep her pure." My instincts told me that ship had passed with her, but I said nothing. As if on cue, he noticed her glare at me and said, "Never some! Take your food. Go back to your room. Behave." The look on her face briefly changed to one of both anger and fear, but she turned and left. Sometimes I call her by her tribal name to make sure she listens. To get my wings worth, I steered the talk into what I knew about Rhea's death and asked about native legends here. Chief said the wolf spirit is one of the strongest of the Paiute, but it was the role of the protector, only attacks for reasons, but that spirit had left the land here along with the wolf packs, driven to better feeding grounds. A coyote is the trickster. If that came to Bobby in a dream, then he was being hunted by something in another form. A skinwalker. Post. Chief had my attention. You mean someone who changes into a creature, like a werewolf? Suddenly, I may have an advantage, having dealt with one before.
No, these are not cursed people, forced to turn into mindless animal under the moon. That is just a fairy tale.
I just looked at him and bit my tongue.
A skinwalker is a man who performs rituals to call forth a beast spirit to offer themselves. They make a deal to let the beast inhabit them, to become the beast again to hunt and feed. In return, they gain the power and immortality of the spirit. They choose this path and become the beast while keeping their mind.
I asked if you can kill it with silver bullets.
No. While the beast spirit is joined with the man, no weapon can harm it unless it is dipped in sacred white ash prepared by a ritual. The only other way is to call out the person by their sacred name and separate them from the spirit, returning them to normal man.
I asked Chief if he could prepare the white ash for me. He laughed and said there are no skinwalkers in this land. They're always in the Navajo country. But he would happily make it for $50. And me without my poker face. He went inside to look for the items to make it. Then Jock and I heard him yelling back and forth with Trudy. It wasn't in English. Jock told me he was accusing her of sneaking out and selling herself to men because he found money she'd hid. We couldn't see what was happening, but she wasn't Trudy anymore. Neva Sam was being given the drill sergeant treatment. Jock said this had been coming because she had been sneaking out to town some nights. So we'd better meet tomorrow, and he'd make sure Gramps would have it ready for me.
We may come to tomorrow with the sun shine on you. Midnight in the desert, and we're listening. We're listening.
If one savage body was hard to keep a lid on, two is twice as hard. When the sheriff didn't hear from VIII the next morning, he found what little remained of him. He never got to fire a shot. It was the same beast, but the tracks trail off, and even the bloodhound refused to follow its scent. Sheriff Roy was ready to take measures to protect people now. He put out an advisory for all living outside of town to keep a weapon handy, especially at night, and that roads will be patrolled after dark to keep people from being out without a reason until this rogue wolf was stopped. I had my own problem last night. I had a dream. I remember I was walking alone in the desert night. I started to hear my name echoed in the winds. Carl Kolchak. I could see a shadowy figure slinking down from the hillside. As it got closer, I could see it was a coyote, the moon reflecting in its eyes. Carl Kolchak, I'm coming for you. Suddenly, it charged at me. It took a leap and pounced on top of me, and I awakened with a jolt. I was lucky not to have had a heart attack. It was so real. I met Jock at the diner at 3 o'clock to get the bag of white ash made by Chief. He threw Trudy out this morning. Said that he won't let a prostitute live in his house. That's tough. But a girl with her looks will do okay in Vegas, I'm sure. Meanwhile, the diner was filling up with the likes of a Bass Pro Shop crowd. Hunters with guns. It was time I tried to recruit some help. Post. After several tries to interest hunters to let me tag along on them, I managed to play the fame card and convince a pair how famous they would be if I was with them covering the story of their great kill. Ortiz and Trailer looked like they fell out of an 80s cop movie. Ortiz looked like Jesse Ventura's less capable brother, and Trailer was the Village People Indian with guns, face paint and all. He seemed to take his native culture seriously, and was the one who decided to take me because he could sense the spirits were watching me. Suddenly, I was feeling very vulnerable. We set out just before nightfall, taking side trails and dirt roads no longer used. It's a miracle my car kept up with theirs. Once parked and on the move, I started telling Trailer that I thought what we were hunting was actually a skinwalker. While Ortiz thought I was a nut, Trailer listened. He was from Arizona, Navajo country, and comes here several times a year for shooting out at High Point. But here, there shouldn't be skinwalkers on Paiute lands, he said. The wolf spirit here would not bond with their magics, only the Navajos. But I begged them to dip their bullets and knives in the ash, in case I'm right. They did. And then Trailer had us find a spot up high as possible to wait, to make sure the skinwalker came to us. Post. My sneakers were full of sand, climbing to the top of a ridge with a clear view of anything coming up one side and a 200-foot cliff drop-off on the other. This better work, because there is no retreat. After about 2 hours, both Trailer and I could feel we were being watched. We made out a small coyote skulking among the bushes coming up the hill. We didn't want to shoot and give away our position. That quickly changed when it got close. We could hear it, whispering my name. Kolchak. The coyote locked eyes with Ortiz, who had suddenly become a believer. To hell with that! He exclaimed and fired 4 shots into it just 20 yards away. The rounds went right through the animal, but did nothing. In the 2 bounds it took to reach Ortiz, it morphed into a man-sized, human-shaped wolf. I angled my phone to get video of Ortiz being torn to shreds, while Taylor unloaded into both of them. There was no saving this buddy. Just a few seconds of gunfire and thrashing. Then the wolf figure reared upright, preparing to go next for Trailer. The moonlight revealed one detail we had missed. This wolf has breasts. The last words of a man named Trailer that night was, "I should have stayed in Phoenix." Then it was on him. There was no way to save him. And I was next. Post. They say when you face death, time almost stands still for you. You would think I'd have more experience with it. But in those precious seconds, it finally made sense. Chief's niece wasn't a Paiute, but a Navajo from Arizona. She's the Skinwalker. Reyes found her in a cave, resting after a hunt. He didn't keep quiet, so she killed him to protect herself. It was her territory to be free, and he threatened it. She was hunting me because I had the ash made to stop her. But why wasn't it working? Her eyes were on me again, this time to rip my heart out instead of stop it. Time caught back up. I was against the cliff. She was preparing to pounce on me. All I could think of was to try what Chief did to see if that could buy me some time. But what was the name again? Trudy? No. Nevasang. Nevasang! Of the Navajo lands! I call you out! She hesitated. Her eyes went wide and her face went blank. But she stayed in her wolf form. I regained her nerve and charged me. As a last-ditch effort, I threw the bag of white ash at her, hoping I could blind her long enough to get away from the edge. The powder exploded out her snout, but she jumped out of the cloud like a talcum-powdered magic ant. I fell to the side as she sailed over me, and over the cliff. Her wing was more human-like on the way down, stopping after several thumps. Postscript. I left everything, made it back to my car, and found my way back to the hotel. A day later, the bodies were spotted by a state chopper while looking for the rogue wolf. The morning after that, Sheriff Roy had wrapped up the case in true Vegas fashion. Murder-suicide of 2 men in a love triangle over a woman on meth. Sex, drugs, guns. Whether the sheriff knew about me or found my car tracks, I don't know. I went back to Chief and told him what really happened with Trudy. He was sad, but believed me. It turned out her father was a well-known Navajo shaman before he died, and she must have inherited his things. We surmised that when I called her by her true name, like he did, it would make her vulnerable to weapons dipped in the ash. But covered in the ash made the cliff bottom the ultimate weapon on her, unlike some cartoon ending. I went back and told Art the scoop, but he said he couldn't use it. Too many lives in town were involved with this, and they would need time to heal and get beyond it. And coming forth would stir the sheriff, and may come looking for me. My camera video was worse than the average UFO sighting. No luck there. Item. The animal attacks ended with no explanation. Item. As I drove out of town, closed casket services were being prepared, but there was one thing few knew and no one could answer. Trudy's exhumed body found no trace of drugs, but did find a broken knife blade in her abdomen, something impossible to survive with no sign of scar or entry wound, that perfectly matches the handle found on Bobby Reyes. Who could have dreamed?